concept is to explain engineering to society at large and to try to bridge the gap between society and engineers, who tend to be misunderstood many times simply because we don't make an effort to explain ourselves to society. We don't tell them about our challenges, our joys, our difficulties in life, and therefore we might be misunderstood because we can be so self-absorbed. The book is not necessarily apologizing for that, it's rather explaining who we are to the society and understand that we are complex, reflective people as everybody else is, and my book tries to speak to that. Well, the title of this book came to me in the context of bridging the gap between engineers and society, simply because at the restaurant in Tennessee, a waiter asked me about my background, and as he realized that I'm Jewish and I'm from Transylvania and I lived most of my life above the Mason-Dixon line, he kind of called me a Transylvanian Jewish Yankee. I thought it was a lovely title for myself, and at that point I realized that if I use a book title that resembles the innovative, the wonderful character of the Connecticut Yankee at King Arthur's Court, written by obviously Mark Twain, every American would relate to that very easily, and because our struggles, engineering struggles, are very close to what the Connecticut Yankee had to go through. And so the title basically came about coming to have the same rhythm with the Connecticut Yankee at King Arthur's Court, and the king that I basically referred to was the impersonation of all the opposition and all the darkness that engineers had to fight using their innovative spirit through their careers. And the title of the book therefore speaks to something that we all know from Mark Twain's book, but it's transposed into the world of engineers and into the spiritual battle that goes on in order to survive in an innovative way. By the way, speaking of the word ingenious, the word ingeniare comes from Latin, where the word engineer actually stems from the word innovation and being ingenious. So that's how the title of the book relates to what engineers do every day. The magic helmet, and there's a subcategory, there's another device I talk about, the magic goggles, come about in this book in order to give me an insight into a world of good and evil that goes on parallel with what our main character goes through. This is a mostly autobiographical book, but at the same time it gives some insight in what I see happening behind the scenes. And I see it happening in every country, in every continent, in every country I worked in. And those characters which appear in the book can be viewed only through these magical devices, which have the ability to rewind and show and explain what went on with the main character, while this other world going on, the good and evil, in parallel. And I think that as a device, I basically made this book a fiction, and a lot of stories in there which never happened, so this is not a narrative and not a memoir. But I think that these devices have the incredible ability to reveal to anyone who's in this field that all the oppositions and all the supports that they see in the background are actually happening in a different world. They will need a special wisdom and insight to see those happen in order to survive, in order to make a difference in the world, and instead of hating the society and other people around them, concentrate on the spiritual reality. So I wish that everybody who will read this book will imagine they have a magic helmet and a magic goggle, and they will be much better and reflective engineers in the future. The most lasting impact, besides bridging the gap between engineers and society, is to influence those engineers, young engineers working out there who are not yet aware of how important to be reflective of what they think, of their ethical choices they make, and therefore comply with the stereotype that there are only two kinds of engineers, introverts and extroverts. And the question becomes, how do you define an extrovert versus an introvert? And the answer is, well, the introvert stares at his own shoes when he talks to you, but an extrovert looks at your shoes when he talks to you. I think that we have to get beyond that stereotype, and we cannot become reflective only if we choose to do so. And even a recent study showed that reflective engineers are actually better engineers. But how can you become reflective? By legislating reflectiveness or offering courses in reflection in which we would ace it and we would still be engineers staring at each other's shoes. So therefore I hope that those who will read my book will be prompted to ponder, reflect, and act on the things that they've done, and therefore become better members of society, design more wonderful and beautiful things, sustainable things, something that will impact society in such a way that they will not destroy the environment, and therefore they will become better engineers. That's the real lasting impact I hope to accomplish after this book being published. My next project that I started actually writing in my head a long time ago is the story of two Holocaust survivors' sons. My brother and I are two brothers who grew up in the same home, yet we chose different paths in life. The commonality between us was the response to the Holocaust, and our response has never been one of exclusion and hatred, but it has been a response of understanding and inclusion. And we believe that's because our parents, who were both survivors of the Holocaust, raised us that way. They never encouraged us to feel victimized. We never told us that we should feel sorry for ourselves. Although there is a big group of people out there who still are traumatized, and I'm not trying to deny that certain people are still traumatized by the Holocaust. We'd like to offer an alternative to that and offer some answers in which we can show with our lives that we came up with a message of hope and forgiveness from this experience. And in that case, we really hope that the third generation of Holocaust survivors will carry that message on to the rest of the world, who will probably understand us much better based on this book.